part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action.
This is Mark Wade, writer of Superman Birthright.
You're listening to the Krypton Report.
Look up in the sky.
Welcome to the Krypton Report podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, the Superman of Blue, and with me, as always, James, Mr. James Cole, that is, the Superman of Red. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up, Tyler? How's it going?
Not bad, not bad. We're counting down the days for school to start. Our kids go back in 1 week from tomorrow, which is when most people are starting to listen to this.
Horrible.
Yeah. And we got some news. This is our first, regular episode in a while.
That it has, yes.
And we've had some fun.
It's a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we've had some fun interviews and fun guests, so it's nice to get back into more of our normal swing. We got some news, and we're going to cover quite a bit today. Just as we prep, instead of doing a huge countdown to Blue Beetle thing, we're just kind of doing this episode, and then next week's the Blue Beetle movie, which, you know what, my kids are really excited for, and I think they should be. We went to Walmart and they had Blue Beetle t-shirts for the kids for $5.98, and they were almost all sold out. So
dang, nice.
I grabbed the last two size mediums for the kids, so it fits Solomon perfect. He'll grow out of it soon, and Sayla's a little big, so
At least she gets to rock the Blue Beetle for a little while longer. Then
she'll just take Solomon. She'll have two. But yeah, they're both excited. So we got the shirts, and it was cool. So I'm hoping the film does well. It sucks there's not a tie-in. I learned that the Burger King Blue Beetle burger was actually a fan joke. It wasn't a real promotion. I felt kind of dumb for that, but it kind of made sense because, I have a Blue Beetle poster that's the scarab inside a Big Belly Burger, burger box, because they hide it in there. So
yeah,
a burger tie-in for DC is great because everybody loves Big Belly Burger. Oh, excuse me while I open this Zoa. Zoa. Yeah. Yes, what you might be thinking, it's too late for a Zoa, Tyler, but you know what? I got some things to do tonight. I need some energy.
Well, for all they know, it could be first thing in the morning. Or new.
It's not. James and I usually don't get to record till late. When we do, I do miss our morning recording. So it's such a good way of waking up, starting our day. I watch the sunrise as I sat here in my super room talking to my buddy James. I'm going to get back on that. But anyways, we try. We're moving forward. But yeah, so Blue Beetle, we're excited for.
I am very excited. Really gonna nail down when to go see it this weekend, after we're done or tomorrow.
Yeah,
it'll be done.
Like you and I were talking about, we had so many factors going into, because originally my mother-in-law wanted to go with us, the kids wanted her to go, then she eventually just kind of bowed out, and we're looking a busy schedule this weekend. I'm like, crap, I was like, are we gonna be able to maybe go on Sunday if we had to, but we found a time. We're going on Saturday, 4:00. So it's going to work out. It'll be nice. But speaking of movies, this is fun. I love when we get news, and then before we get to record, the news has already kind of been debunked or more comments have been made on it. That's always one of my favorites. So Gal Gadot tweeted about having a meeting with James Gunn and Safran about Wonder Woman 3 and having a third film with her that's in the works. And then a day or two later, they're like, no, there's no Wonder Woman 3 in development. Because, there was all those, there was projects that Gunn had said that they weren't talking about, and so, but I just was like, okay, I love when stars talk about stuff. And I never listen to stars unless they are the producer on a movie. Because they all will just do anything to puff. I always look for the director or the producer, what they're talking about, more than the actual star.
There's quite a lot of legal things when it comes to what you can and can't say about those movies as they're being developed in different stages of development.
Right. Right. And I'm going to ask you this, James, and we've been friends for many a year, so I think you can be honest with me. Do you want a Gal Gadot Wonder Woman 3? Are you just ready for a clean reboot? How are you feeling?
Oh, I mean, her appearance in BVS was great. Her first movie was so good. Her obviously Wonder Woman 1984 was
bad.
horrible.
And then she's just been regulated to cameo appearances in Shazam
Yeah.
and in Flash.
And I mean, we loved her in Zack Snyder's Justice League, and they leave her off in the perfect position for a Wonder Woman 3.
Yeah.
In a position where, she maybe believes or is worried about what has happened to her sisters and her mother on the island.
Which was my pitch.
And trying to get back there.
Which was my pitch about a Wonder Woman 3. Go back and find that episode, people. I've come to the point where
if that's what we were getting, I mean, absolutely. It'd be hard to see. I don't think I guess I would prefer just a clean break.
That's where I'm sitting.
Get a new Wonder Woman.
With the fact that we're in these strikes,
we won't see. Yeah, we won't see. I just don't think we'll see the Wonder Woman 3. I mean, unless it was a fantastic movie and kind of started anew, and not an origin, just a brand new Wonder Woman tale that fit the world. But no, I just think it would be best.
I feel like after Aquaman, let's just give a break. I mean, we're on the strikes. We've already got rid of Ben. We're done with Henry. The Flash was not a success as much as we liked that movie, and we're going to talk about that movie again within the next month or two when we do our commentary watch. I'm just at a point. I'm like, let's just break ties and move forward. I'd rather be excited for I'm already excited for Superman Legacy and everything, but I'm at a point where, Gal, you did great. But if I'm not seeing you next to Henry and Ben, I'm just not there right now. Starting and just really starting something new with all of them. Some of the minor characters I'm okay with staying around.
I mean, like her cameos, though short, and all she really did was smile and stuff. I mean,
right.
She outshone everybody just being there. Like, she's a great Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying she's not. I mean, I love a Wonder Woman 3, but I think for the whole of the universe and just where we're going, because I don't think she would do more than maybe one more movie. And if we're going to reboot Superman, we might as well just do it all. Like, Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, sure, let's keep her. Hawkman from the Black Adam, if we want to keep them, sure, because they only got one movie. They're not really tied to the Trinity or the whole Justice League as it is. Let's move forward with new. But speaking of new, there is a new Superman toy that's coming from McFarlane. It's not part of their 7-inch line. It's part of their retro TV for Batman 66. It is the discussed Superman from Batman 66 figure. Brian sent us a whole link that talked about how Batman or Superman was alluded to on Batman. And I saw this figure, what the final look is, and I immediately thought, this looks like Ben Affleck when he played George Reeves in Hollywoodland.
It does.
I was like, that's George Reeves in Hollywoodland. And I already pre-ordered the figure, but it is, I mean, just look it up. McFarlane, Batman 66 Superman. It looks like Ben Affleck as George.
Yeah. And I think you get around it a little bit there. Like, it doesn't look like George, so it's not exactly George. It looks kind of like Ben when he was playing George, and that doesn't look like Ben because he had like prosthetics on
Yep.
to change his appearance just a little bit.
Yep. So it's funny, but that's what I say. And then some sad news is it was announced that we were going to get a Kingdom Come animated film, and it was canceled when the new regime came in. And this kind of goes back to part of our discussion where we talked about with the Tomorrowverse, them doing Crisis, and is that going to be the end of the Tomorrowverse? And after that comes this whole James Gunn animated films connecting to the live action stuff. Are we going to see no more of these continued animated features that we have enjoyed for, gosh, since what, 2008 was Superman vs. Doomsday?
Yeah.
So I'm just saying because they said they canceled it.
I think it might even be 7.
Maybe it was. 7 sounds right though.
It does.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm pretty sure it is. I could look it up, but I'm too lazy.
I think it was the only one released that year.
It was, because they only used to do
2007.
1 a year, and then they got 2 a year, and then they were doing them 4 a year. But I'm just saying, like, it feels because, Gunn talked about this whole Elseworlds branding, but I'm not really seeing this Elseworlds branding because I thought that's what this would fall under.
I mean, that's what it could fall under. I mean, I guess just thinking about it, I guess we could open up the idea of having like the DC universe that we may like the way that it crosses over with animation and live action and stuff. Something that we may all have wanted to see at some point or another in our lives. And maybe that's a real possibility for this DC universe. So I guess, I mean, as much as I would hate to lose this line of movies, if they were still made available the way these are, like, maybe let's see how it'll go. Because, I mean, that's the best... It's the optimistic way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
Yep. That's what we got to be. Optimistic, full of hope. That's what we do. That's what we do here on the Krypton Report. If you ever hung out with James, you would know for sure.
Well, thank you, Tyler.
You're welcome, buddy. So our next part of our episode, because we got a lot to cover, we're going to talk a little bit about Blue Beetle. We're not going to get into a whole in-depth, but I'm going to give you a quick summary of who Blue Beetle is. Then we're going to talk about a couple appearances that Blue Beetle has been in recently. Okay? So my question is, who is the Blue Beetle? Jaime Reyes is a superhero appearing in DC Comics, created by Keith Giffen, John Rogers, and Cully Hammer. The character made his first appearance in Infinite Crisis number 3, February of 2006. Jaime Reyes is the third character to assume the mantle of Blue Beetle, but is substantially different from his predecessors. Introduced in 1939, the original Blue Beetle, Dan Garrett, was a Fox comic police officer who fought crime with superpowers gained by investigating Vitamin 2X. A revamped version of this character, archaeologist Dan Garrett, introduced in 1964 by Charlton Comics, drew mystical abilities from an ancient Egyptian scarab, published by Charlton Comics and later DC. In 1966, creation Ted Cord was Garrett's student who continued his legacy of costume crime fighting, although he had no superpowers. I'm just going to say this. I know it's not going to happen, but if Patrick Wilson appeared in Blue Beetle as Ted Cord, I would laugh, and I might be one of the only people to get it in the theater. Everyone will think, oh, he's Ocean Master, but I'd be the only one to make the Watchmen connection. DC introduced Jaime.
That would be pretty amazing.
Oh, I know. If he wasn't Ocean Master as a filmmaker, that's who I would have went after. Just because if anyone doesn't know who's listening, originally the Watchmen characters are actually based on the Charlton comics. DC wouldn't let them use the Charlton comics to tell the story like he wanted to. So Alan Moore created these characters that were very similar. Peacemaker became the comedian. Night Owl is Blue Beetle. Dr. Manhattan is the Atom. So Rorschach is the Question. So that's where my joke is. DC introduced Jaime Reyes in 2006, and retcon explained that the Blue Beetle mythos, revealed to be alien in origin, the Scarab bonds with Rise and provides him with a suit of extraterrestrial armor shortly after Cord's death. Though only a teenager, Reyes quickly forms a working relationship with Cord's former teammate and best friend Booster Gold, and is included into the Teen Titans and the Justice League. Zolo, I'm not going to pronounce his last name because I don't want to disrespect, will be playing the second version of the live-action Jaime Reyes in the film that we will be reviewing next week. So that's like just some quick who is Blue Beetle, kind of give some background, and we will continue from there. Now, Blue Beetle makes his live-action debut in Smallville, Season 10, Episode 18, entitled what, James?
Booster.
Booster. And the first thing I thought of was, nobody likes you, Booster. That's a Jingle All the Way joke, people. Because, in Smallville, we can't have more than one word.
Oh, no, they're all single word titles.
Except for Absolute Justice, because... But in this episode, we meet Jaime, and we meet Booster Gold. And it's our first live-action team-up, kind of the two. And this Jaime is a pretty weak and nerdy character. He is a teenager outcast, and it goes like this. Here's the description. Clark gets an inverse makeover from Lois in order to become a gray mouse when the blur goes public. Just then, a flashy, media-hungry new superhero emerges, Booster Gold, who systematically steals the show. Clark discovers Booster came from the future with a Legionnaire's ring that was stolen. Generally bullied, shy schoolboy Jaime Reyes is inadvertently infected with the alien Scarab, which Booster was hired to retrieve for Industrial's Ted Cord, hence transformed into the Blue Beetle, an uncontrollable monster. Clark could just expose Booster as a fake coward, but chooses to educate him in superhero ethics.
I really like Season 10 Clark.
I do too, but this episode, man, if you really look at it, is a mess. Booster shows up, he's all over the place, and then he's getting the key to the city before he even gets the Scarab, and because of him is the whole reason why Jaime gets the Scarab, so that just changes the timeline there. And this episode played with the whole what day is it of Smallville? It's just, if you really look at it, it's very confusing. But
yeah. He went media hard on it, and that's all it took is pretty much what it looks like in that episode.
I love that Skeets is just like a Bluetooth device on his ear.
Yeah, right.
He's like, and Skeets.
I thought that was a creative way to go about it.
Yeah, it was
for Smallville. And
I have here in my notes that the Booster Gold look was done after Greg Kinnear's superhero Captain Amazing and Mystery Men, where his suit's got that leathery, but it's got all kinds of sponsor patches and everything on it. This is definitely, Clark in glasses, as Lois is trying to really downplay Clark, and he's trying to learn to be the nerdy Clark. We see Jaime, who's even more of a nerd, as he falls in front of a car. Clark goes to save it, but Booster saves it first. Of course, it's the van from Ted Cord, and the Scarab crawls out. The Scarab, Lois tells that the Scarab attaches itself to a court employee named Dan Garrett, who then went crazy and basically attacked people and murdered people, and they had to get it off of him. And when they did, Garrett died. I'm just like, okay, that sucks. Poor Jaime. But
right. Well, because the way when he becomes the Blue Beetle, once it attaches itself to him, it turns into this like monstrous armor thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's big and armory and blocky. I mean, it's rough. It looks rough.
Yeah.
But let's look at it like this, though. I thought about this. If Jaime wasn't introduced in 2006, this is what, 2011 when this episode comes out? That's 5 years, man. That's not bad from a comic book appearance to live action.
Right.
So, good for Blue Beetle.
So, I mean, they do give him a very basic thing in there where he has to relax and control the armor, so that way he has to, he has to win the battle over the armor, at least in his initial outing, because it is so dangerous. So, I mean, it kind of says something about the character, because it is an interaction that he's having with the Scarab.
Yeah.
So it actually becomes a part of him. It's part of the character. He always hears the Scarab in his head because it's attached to his nervous system,
which is going to be fun to hear in the film. In the episode, Jaime comes to Booster as a hero because the whole thing is about Booster being out in the open and being a hero, and Booster just brushes him off about booking something. And it's interesting because this is in that time when you have the heroes being persecuted but Booster's being praised. And this is when we have the weird second version of Cat Grant in Smallville, who's the super uptight, prim and proper person. She's in love with Booster. She even becomes one of the Booster girls. Just think about the scene in Iron Man 2 where Tony shows up for the Stark Expo. Those are the Booster girls.
Right.
We have a scene where Lois tries to help Jaime when she meets him as he opens 2 exploding sodas on himself. And we get Booster's just a douche. He has a stamp instead of signature. He's putting stuff all over the place to make himself look better. And basically, Clark tries to confront Booster. And, he knows who he is. And Booster's there basically to steal all of Clark's thunder. And at the end, where they're rehearsing for Booster to get the key to the city once he tracks down the Scarab, which I think is ridiculous. He hasn't even done it yet. Jaime shows up and the Scarab takes over. And the only thing that stops, Blue Beetle is going to destroy Booster, no problem. But Booster, basically uses the words that Clark had, and what do you call it? He's able to take over, and Jaime is able to actually take control of the Scarab, which is impressive when the Cord Industry people get there at the end of the episode. But we get the inside the helmet look of Jaime, and he is sweating like crazy.
Right.
It's like all the ladies when James comes walking around just sweating. Just I don't know what to do. I do. Has there been, because I always thought this was a great title, when Booster says instead of Man of Steel, it'll be Man of Gold. And I was like, man, that sounds like a really good title for a Booster Gold series.
Right. It does, actually. Sounds like it could be a title for a one-off. I mean, it could be like a one-off graphic novel type thing, or it could be an ongoing series. It would definitely make it stand out.
Right. Now, here's this is where I say don't think too hard. because Booster talks about how he started betting on sports and all this in the future, and he was a quarterback, you know, and he steals the time. Why not just travel back in time and stop himself from betting on sports and throwing his games and just tell himself not to do it? Why go through this whole thing of trying to be a hero type thing?
Because then you wouldn't have the greatest hero you've never heard of.
Exactly. But I'm just like, you just gotta go with it. It's a very odd conversation you get between Jaime, Ted, Cord, and Lois. At the end, it's very like, this kid has an alien thing strapped to his back, and he took control of it, and everyone's just like, all right, good job, pal. Yeah, high five.
All right. Have fun at school tomorrow.
Yeah.
With the dangerous alien armor.
Sweaty teenage man.
With the dangerous alien weapon attached to your spine.
What do you call it? Kat makes her super cookies at the end, and it looks like she drew the 8 symbol that we see, you know, Clark burn on his chest in season 3.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what this episode does give me? This episode gives me one of the greatest scenes in Smallville. As far as screw it, period. It's when Clark changes in the phone booth and it does the camera spins and he zips up the red jacket. It is in this episode and it is one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
But you know, it's a good episode, but I mean, Blue Beetle doesn't get a whole lot. And it just kind of sucks because it was his first appearance, but it is worth mentioning and talking about. But yeah, it was a Booster Gold and Blue Beetle episode, basically.
Oh, I see what happened.
Yeah, even Jamie knows that it was not that great for Jaime. Like, he could have got more out of it, and they didn't give it to him.
No, I mean, he ended up being like the unintentional antagonist.
No.
You know, when it came to the episode, because there wasn't really a villain per se. There was obviously what Booster was doing and his antagonism of Clark, but then as an outward force, like being Jaime.
Yep. Now, the next big thing, like, Jaime does appear as the Blue Beetle in some Batman Brave and the Bold, which the kids and I were going to watch before this podcast and we didn't get to, so the kids and I might just watch it on our own. But he does appear in Young Justice. And I picked out an episode just because I liked a little bit more about his heritage. But in the episode, it's in season 2, Blue Beetle plays a large part in season 2.
Yeah,
because the Reach,
a large role.
The Reach comes to Earth, and that's why it's called Invasion, and you learn more about it. But in Young Justice, you learn that this version is initially a member of the team who became attached to the Blue Beetle scare while passing by Cord Industries after Ted Cord sacrificed himself to stop the light from obtaining the device. Additionally, Reyes does not experience pain while transforming into the Blue Beetle. Moreover, the Scarab, also voiced by the same actor, Eric Lopez, can speak in English, finds lethal courses of action preferable to capture and restrain, and was served from the Reach's control after it landed on Earth centuries prior and came into contact with ancient mystics, Bealian mystics. After being misled by the Reach's green Martian, Thrall, the Green Beetle, Reyes, and the Scarab fall under the Reach's control until the team uses the ancient mystics' magic to free them along with the Green Beetle. Reyes would go on to help thwart the Reach's invasion of Earth and in the 3rd season join Beast Boy's Outsiders. In this episode that we looked at, which is called Beneath, in season 2, Jaime is featured as he searches for his missing friend Ty. We get a little bit of what his everyday life is like, and just how Jaime is a strong character. We see the Beetle. We get to experience a little bit about, you know, where he lives in this. He looks like he lives more in like the West than he does like really anywhere else.
Oh yeah. He's Jaime Reyes is from the Southwest.
So it was
not sure if it's New Mexico or Arizona or Texas.
I think it was Arizona, but I could be wrong that it was on the episode. But we see him investigating.
That I can't actually remember.
Ty's missing, and he goes to Ty's grandfather, his mother. He confronts the abusive boyfriend of Ty's mom, and it really gives you a good idea of the kind of person that Jaime is. And anyone who's interested in Blue Beetle at all, I highly recommend Young Justice Season 2. Now, we are going to be talking about my adventures with Superman. But episode 6, My Adventures with Mad Science. Are you ready, James?
My Adventures with Mad Science, yes.
When Jimmy gets kidnapped, it's up to Lois and Clark to save him. But rescuing Jimmy will lead them into danger as they deal with mad scientists, military secrets, and relationship woes. All right, James, what do you think about this episode?
I friggin' loved it.
This episode was such a curveball.
It was.
Because, first of all, like, we're coming off...
There's a lot in it, though.
Yes. Because, it ends with Jimmy going to find Sasquatch. And we see the ape, and, people are thinking Grodd. Levi was like Titano. And it was neither of them.
I was going to say, did we mention Monsieur Mala
No.
last time we spoke about it?
No, I even thought later maybe the Ultra Humanite. But no, like it went, and it doesn't surprise me with the obscure villains that they've used, kind of in the way they're doing villains.
Yeah.
But they're at Cadmus. First of all, that's worth pointing out. And they talk about how they opened a black hole and what happened, and the brain and Monsieur Mala are like in a romantic relationship. And they talk about how they didn't have any robots or drones at Cadmus, but when Superman entered the premise, it activated because they were hunting him.
It activated the OMAX.
Yes. So a lot of like quick Easter eggs. And one of my favorite parts in this episode is, this is Clark open with his powers with Lois, going to find Jimmy. They're putting their differences aside. Is when these the OMAC starts shooting, and Clark jumps in front of her, and she says, "How did you know you were bulletproof?" And he says, "I didn't, but I knew you weren't."
Yeah. This Clark is so well done, so well written.
And I will fight anybody that wants to say crap about this show for the Lois and Clark where she got mad at him. No, they resolved that. It's called drama. How many shows we watch that has stupid drama in it? Because that's what moves your plot and allows your characters to grow. It's all about how you handle it and move forward.
Yeah,
okay.
And they didn't do it episode after episode after episode.
Right. Sometimes we have negative responses to stuff that we need to take a moment and deal with, much like we talked about in that Superman and Lois episode. So people need to calm their roll.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the shows are so much better with the less filler. Not dragging things out for dramatic sake. Just bringing the drama, making it hit hard and emotional, and then having a resolution to it.
I like this episode for just the development of the relationships of the characters, like Clark and Lois, and Clark, Lois, and Jimmy. Like how, and like this is where Jimmy's like, Clark, you're Superman. I know. He's like, what? You told her before me? He's like, whoa, she figured it out. Like, Jimmy figured it out. He's like, all the weird stuff going on and everything.
Like the first time we met, you ripped the door handle in half. He's like, and then you tried to blame it on the screws. It could have been the screws. He's like, it was ripped in half.
I liked it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I like that, Jimmy respected him like you would have told me when you were ready. So I think that's really a way of looking at things from two different angles and just allowing your friends to, come out and tell you what's going on with them, instead of you prying and begging them. So the next episode, season 1, episode 7, Kiss Kiss, Fall in a Portal. Clark tries to plan a normal date without any Superman problems, but gets interrupted when Mr. and Mrs. Pitlick sweeps him, Jimmy, and Lois into a high-stakes, multiverse-hopping chase. First of all, I've seen people throw shade at this episode because they said, and I quote, "I thought we were past evil Superman." All right, I gotta say this. I think the representation that Lois sees of evil Superman shows that not all Supermen are good, but also juxtaposes that this Clark Superman is really good. And I think this episode highlights how good of a couple they are.
Yeah. No, you're never, and I think that's a stupid thing to complain about too, because it's not like this Clark is an evil Superman. This isn't a show about an evil Superman.
Nope.
It just doesn't shy away from the fact that in the multiverse there are evil Supermen. Like, not every Superman is Clark Kent, who had Jonathan and Martha, and a handful of the other adopted parents who raised him throughout the multiverse. So it's a pretty just lame complaint.
Yep, I agree. But I just want to put that there. So in this episode, it starts off, they're getting ready for their date. Clark has everything timed down with a board and string and everything. And Jimmy's like, "Oh my gosh." He goes to Lois. Lois has her board and string as she's sitting there in sweatpants. And then she's like, "Oh my God, I gotta figure out what to wear." And then Mrs. Pitlick shows up and he's with Clark and he says Lois is in trouble. So of course Clark's gonna do everything he can to go and save her. And what did you think about the look of Mixie?
I mean, it threw me off to begin with, but also as soon as it threw me off, I remembered that this is an anime. Everybody's look is very different than what it normally is. And I think it was really cool how they actually made his little crown a bowler hat, though.
Yes. He was very anime-ish, very genie-like, very Jin.
Yes.
Brian hated it, but I was okay with it. I just rolled with it. Some of the comics have drew him a little different. If you go into some of the Grant Morrison, I was thinking of New 52 early stuff when they show Mixie's world. They're more pixie-like, so they remind me of someone who would appear on Thundercats, honestly.
I mean, he always looks like a cartoon. Almost no matter where he is. Even when they tried to do him on Superboy, they got a guy who was very cartoonish, and then they dressed him up to make him look extremely cartoonish.
I loved Mixie on Supergirl when it was Thomas.
Right.
That just fit for me. That worked so well.
Absolutely. So I think that a genie type creature, like you said, like a djinn or something, makes a lot of sense as a very animated look to a character who's always looked like a cartoon.
Mm-hmm. And then for Lois and Jimmy, they get visited by the League. Was it the League or Legion of Lois Lanes?
I think it was the League of Loises.
Yeah, it was the League of Lois Lanes. And these are there's 4 of them. One of them's Lois Lane.
Yeah.
And what we find out is they show that we get the reference of Lois Prime, which looks like the Fleischer Lois. We get a scene, a hall of Loises. We see different Loises throughout the multiverse and time. We see Dana Delaney, Superman the Animated Series Lois.
Mm-hmm.
But what we find is these are all accomplished Lois Lanes, and they kind of downplay our Lois as if she's nothing special or important. And they refer to Superman as the Clark. And what we find out is these Lanes, Loises, are the ones who are connected to the evil Supermans. So they're very jaded and hate basically Supermans. They have kryptonite shooting blasters. They're the ones that had taken Mixie's crown. And they have a sidekick who is it Jamila Olsen?
Sounds right.
You know?
Yeah. But she was very Jimmy Olsen as well. She had her own conspiracy. Yeah, her own Flamebird.
She's like, you're a Flamebirder too? So,
yeah.
And it sets the stage as they're trying to figure out. We found out Clark helped Mixie break in somewhere. And that's because he was under the assumption that Lois was in trouble.
We didn't really, I don't think we said anything about when Mixie shows up, he transforms Clark into various versions of himself, the animated series, and even a crab. And he changes back to himself, and he's like, was I a crab?
Yeah. He's like, was that a crab? Like, we see him as the Fleischer Superman, the Superman the series. And then a crab, he's like, was I a crab? Like, I was rolling. Kids were having a good time. And, Lois gets this from headquarters, this sphere that shows her all the evil Superman in the multiverse. After her and Clark come together and basically kiss and have their strong moment, and he schmaltzes her, and it's beautiful. But it has a piece of kryptonite in it. So it was a really good episode. I really liked it. I thought it was an interesting way of just showing the multiverse exists, tying things in. There wasn't anything with the ongoing villains of the season. It kind of bums me out that it's episode 7 because we only have 10 episodes of this first season.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, where's the good old days of 20-some episodes in a season?
Yeah, right. See, a show this good is we want more of it.
But it's that bitter thing. Is the short thing makes for the good tight writing.
It does. I mean, the last episode we got what they did, the brain and Monsieur Mala and Black Hole. They had a Red Sun shield that weakened Clark when he entered it. They had Omax that didn't activate until he got there. And that's where the general was stationed at some point. And I think it has something to do with, Clark's landing or some other, war or fight or something like that. And
yeah, exactly.
So it's like, yeah, there's so much packed into just so many episodes, and it's only so many episodes, and it's so good.
And I think the next episode's a 2-parter. So we'll kind of do those two together in one recording. When they talk about how the black hole that opened that Monsieur Mala and the brain went through is actually what helped Mixie escape. So, eek. But yeah, I love it. It makes
and
me
they
happy.
Went to some other dimension.
Yeah, it made me happy. So now we're gonna get to everyone's favorite part of the podcast, where James sits back and tells us about comics. Now
Is that where we're at?
I have 3 comics on the list here. If we've not crossed our hairs and dotted our lowercase j's. I have Night Terror's Action Comics #1 and John Kent #6. And I have World's Finest 17. I forgot to ask you if you had read World's Finest 17 yet.
Oh, no, I have not.
All right, that's cool.
actually just getting ready to read, or no. Yeah, I was finishing Doom Patrol #1, and then I was going to jump into the Night Terrors #1.
So,
I'll have to jump on that World's Finest too.
Did you do Night Terrors Action #1?
I did.
Okay, so let's start there.
So it opens with Power Girl's dream. And she's being, it's very dark. I mean, you know, it's called Night Terrors, it's nightmare.
Yeah, but I will say, like, I've been reading just as they, like, I'm buying the super books, but I'm reading them as they drop on Ultra.
Yeah.
And they vary from being, like, really dark to being just kind of, like, creepy. Like, oh. Like, there is definitely a different wave depending on who's writing it.
Yeah, I'm actually looking. I'm going in to try and read all of the Night Terrors as they come on Ultra. But guy here he says, because I can disfigure you and no one else will want you, and then you'll be mine forever. It's pretty crazy. But he's chasing down Power Girl. Chases her home. She runs home. Her parents are leaving her. Like, they say you weren't supposed to be back this early. This is uncomfortable. They said at least somebody out there wants you, kiddo. Like this guy who's chasing after her. She ends up breaking her mom. Her mom is shattered in pieces like glass, still screaming at her. And then as the guy is coming at her, she sees some errors behind him, and she attacks him, and he ends up being Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Like her Earth's version of Superman. He's got the gray hair around the sides and around the back. And she attacked him, and he just shuts her off. Like hits a I don't know. Just some shutdown button. That's why we made so many replacements for you. She always, because her story is she feels out of place. With the super family, she's kind of got a similar thing going on that Connor does.
Yep.
So many supers around, and she's always been a Kara Zor-El from another Earth, from another universe.
Book. That'd be a good book, dude. Connor and Power Girl,
right?
Like doing their own adventure. That'd be a really cool book.
And she's going by Paige now. So you got Paige and Connor.
That's what you should call the book too.
She wakes up to the person that she's been staying with, that she's been working with her new psychic powers. But it's just, and it's just so many nightmares. She ends up being locked in some sort of sci-fi tube. She's like in the Matrix.
Yeah, like it is like layered. She is layered in like nightmares and like Inception. Even Streaky comes after her, and the person she's with has a hole in her, and
well, Streaky blasts a hole in her. Like Streaky's trying to go after her. But she's just error system reboot, and she just is trapped in the machine.
I mean, like you said, it's dark. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it might. It's kind of. It seems like it might be kind of building off the fact of, one, we've got the story of her, like feeling like she doesn't belong with the super family, what we were just talking about, but then also with the new psychic powers that she has, she's kind of in the real world and then in people's minds, and now she's like in a machine. Like, so as part of her nightmare, like feeling like she doesn't live in the real world anymore, or partially doesn't live in the real world anymore because of her psychic abilities.
I mean, that's true.
Just kind of where I thought that might be going in a way. Then we got Stuff of Nightmares, Part 1. Philip Kennedy Johnson wrote it. Last Power Girl and She's Got No Strings writer Lee Williams.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So we've got Connor, Keenan, the twins, Natasha, and Kellex, and they are letting the twins stay up to watch a scary movie, chainsaw movie. Got two girls running from a guy with a chainsaw on the screen.
That's a James Cole Saturday night.
I mean, yes, it is.
Running from a guy with a chainsaw.
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm running from a guy with a chainsaw. Actually, we just did watch Texas Chainsaw. What was this, Saturday night?
Ohio Chainsaw. It's more like a tree trimmer chainsaw, real small blade.
It was the 2003 one. Texas Chainsaw.
Was that Texas Chainsaw? Wait.
With Jessica Biel.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that one and then Origins I watched with my college roommate, and I was like, these feel like the same movie.
Like, they do.
Like with cut and paste, and then years later, we watched the Texas Chainsaw 3D, which the most unbelievable part in that entire film is the shirt at the end. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. I mean, you got Alexandria Daddario in it.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, that whole scene, I'm like, that's some strong Scotch tape.
Right? For real. That is some serious double-sided tape.
Even Gorilla, that's like if Gorilla and Duck got together and was like, did the classic Arnold and Carl Weathers arm, thing. Like, boom, let us bond. But back to our comic.
Excellent. And the twins are making a bit of a mess with the popcorn, and Kellex tries to clean it up. And the little machine arm tentacle comes in, kind of scares the twins, scares the young man, and he's afraid of Cyborg Superman. He's afraid of Henshaw because of everything that had happened. What a battle that was in Actions 1056.
Mm-hmm.
Really good book. It's been a fantastic run. So Natasha turns off the TV, bedtime. Says she's going to read them a book. And young Otho says, Connor, Keenan, will you spend the night here? Sure, buddy. Nothing wrong with a good old-fashioned sleepover. Besides, don't split up, right? They had some good dialogue going on about horror movies, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
I like Connor and Keenan getting along. Keenan learning English. It's really fun.
That's the book right there, man. Like Keenan, Connor, and Paige.
Well, because they work very. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of varying powers. There, the tactile telekinesis and like that mystical way that Keenan is, and then Paige with her psychic abilities, and all of them with their Kryptonian powers.
Yeah, it would be really cool. Like, it'd be an interesting kind of super book. They want to throw in another super book on us.
Well, I mean, this is why I am so happy that they are doing this with Action Comics, giving us all of these people from the super family. I think we were talking about that's what they should do a while back.
Yeah.
Anyways, in the Phantom Zone, can't hurt us. He's having a nightmare about Cyborg Superman, and that art is really awesome, actually. Cyborg Superman in the fire.
Yeah, scaring, like the memory that scares them. It looks awesome.
Yeah. So Otho gets up and he goes out. He sees that Connor's missing, and that Connor is now like Cyborg Superman, and he is chasing him, calling him a meat snack. And, like he's screaming, people are waking. He's hollering, people are waking up. They're saying that Cyborg, he's a cyborg. He took Connor and Kellex. He's going to kill all of us. They are looking for Crypto, and they can't find him. Connor's missing, so is Crypto. They end up going out onto the balcony, and they say, what is wrong with the sky? Is this something that happens on Earth? No. Nothing about this is normal. And there is some sort of red Death Star in the sky. Superman black and red banners all over the place. Looks like the Superman symbol is bleeding. And then you got Connor, Cyborg, climbing out of the television, going to, he says he's going to assimilate them. He's gonna take them all into himself.
It's creepy, but
they all start attacking him, and he ends up taking Natalie's suit and taking Natalie and bringing it into herself. He's got Crypto with him too.
Poor Crypto. It was a good book. I mean, I like the way the actions, like these mini stories. I kind of hope we go back to having some sort of backup story with young John, by Jurgens and everything. Let me ask you a tough question, James.
Well, that story wasn't over with.
I know. I'm saying, like, past that story, I hope we continue.
Ah.
Let me ask you a tough question.
Yes.
How are you feeling on the twins? Do you like the twins? You know, I've heard people say the twins were introduced as like a way of filling the void of young John. I don't feel that it helps. So far, I think the twins are okay. I'm not really connecting with them. I always forget their names.
Osul and Otho.
Yeah. Like, I know it's Otho, but I can't, the other one. So I like the super books and how they're going, like the huge super family, but it just feels like it's more added on that I don't know if I'm liking or not liking. I don't have a
I think we're gonna have
it.
to see where the Fire of Olgrun eventually goes. The only way that they fit, besides the little bit that they've done, like being concerned with how John feels, and John, experiencing an emotion that he knew, like, he didn't necessarily need to experience it. He missed out on that time with his parents, and they missed out on that time with him. So he knows it and everything, but it's just the having kids that age when he left, that being something of a question. Like, are they trying to replace that time with those kids? Like that not being the case. I mean, it worked in that sense, and I mean, so far, it gave us a good story here. They've only been with us since the end of Warworld, and that hasn't been all that long.
It's been at least, what, a year?
Pretty close. Like I said, that Fire of Olgrun thing, that's the only thing I think that has to pay off in some way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what gave Superman his power boost, as well as what's supposed to maybe drive one of the twins mad. Because of that fire.
Do you think it'll end up being twin versus twin, like in a battle?
I really don't know.
Don't know. All right. Moving on to The Adventures of Superman John Kent number 6, the Injustice Saga finale. Now, I had this conversation with Phil the other day. Do you see this as a miniseries, or is this an ongoing book?
Well, normally when it's a mini series, they say, one of 6, one of 8, one of 12,
Right,
whatever.
and that was my thought. Like, I always thought it was an ongoing, because I think there's still, like, for example, I was a little upset, Tom Taylor, that Val Zod disappeared so early in this. And I thought you could have, like, elongated the story a little bit before you jump to, Ultraman's death and Injustice Superman.
Yeah.
Like,
So in my opinion, the way the story kind of goes, the way it kind of ends, it changes things about what happened in the Injustice universe. So whereas Masters of the Universe versus Injustice is a story based on the alternate ending of Injustice 2. It's not the story off of the main ending, the real ending. This kind of makes it seem like it's the end of Injustice in a different way. Because whereas Injustice has continued to go, like if we are going to get an Injustice 3 like has been teased. Well, I don't know if teased or speculated. Either way. If that was the case, like you've got a continuing Injustice storyline where Superman is evil, and then in this timeline for this Injustice Superman, maybe John gets through to him.
I think if they do Injustice 3, John Kent needs to be a playable character.
Oh, definitely.
And one skin should be this, and one skin should be young John. So, like, the book opens, and it's John powering up at the sun. And he knows that they're going to kill and execute, what do you call it? They're going to kill
Batman and Harley.
Yep. And he goes to the Flash, and he talks with the Flash. And
he's the most dangerous one of all of them.
And Laura's not happy tonight with it. And he kind of talks some sense into the Flash, and he says, Flash says, if you hurt Clark, I'll catch up to you. He says, I know. Thank you, Barry. And then he goes, and this was, I thought, was pretty awesome and brutal. He rips off Hawkgirl's wings. And then he goes and takes Lantern's ring, Hal's yellow ring. And then we see Wonder Woman in the top panel, which is James's Wonder Woman. And it's very interesting how he's having to deal with each of the other Justice members. So yeah, I mean, James's Wonder Woman's flying off here in the top panel.
Oh, I thought my Wonder Woman. That's funny.
Yeah, this is good times for reasons. But he talks about how he takes her all the way out of planet.
Yeah, it takes her out past Jupiter. It takes her all the way to Titan.
And I'm moving quicker than I ever have before, faster than ancient deities. I'm stronger than I've ever been, but she's Diana, Princess of Themyscira. And I like how John's costume was solid blue. And he says, she still managed to attack as we reach Titan. The sound of my jaw breaking is louder than in the dense atmosphere. And he says, he talks to her. He says, so are her words. You She says, "You could have been so much to Kal-El. You could have been some of the love he lost. I will bury the disappointment that is you in this moon's dust." He says, "Wow, you are not the person you should be."
No, very much not.
Then he goes to Damien with the lasso of truth, which I love that he took from Wonder Woman. He puts it in Damien's hand. He says,
He says, "Do you want Bruce Wayne to die?" Then gives him the lasso. He says, "No." He says, "No, we lost our Alfred. You should talk to yours. His approval is all that matters. You don't need the validation of a dictator. You're stronger than that."
It's good stuff, you know. And then we have, you know, evil Superman. Can't get a hold of anyone. Opens the cage to Jay Nakamura. Then boom, John Kent comes in. And he said, "I'll let you read the panel, James. Go ahead, read it."
When John Kent comes in,
Yep.
says, "Kal-El, would you care to step outside?"
And they go outside. And he says, "You broke them out?" He says, "I did." And then Superman and John are arguing. And it's a really good, discussion between the two, because he says, Superman says, "If this man died at my hands, what would you do?" John says, "I would do whatever it takes to ensure you face justice and no more." Superman, "You really think so? You think you're stronger than anger, stronger than grief?" And John says, "What?"
Superman has to be.
And then Superman breaks Jay's arm. That's brutal.
Yeah.
And then John powers up, turns all blue and electric-y.
Yes,
and this is great. He says, Superman says, "That's it. Show me what you have, son. Do your worst. Show the world." And then John says, "I'm faster than he is. I'm stronger, not for long, but for long enough." And he hugs Superman. And he says, "I'm sorry for what happened to you, but it doesn't excuse anything you've done. You have to face justice, no matter how powerful, no matter how much influence you hold. Powerful people must also be held accountable. This world has to have the same laws for everyone." And I will say, I use this panel right here to help Solomon. He's just been dealing with some anger. And I was talking about how sometimes we have to fight love with the anger that we have inside. And I talked to him about this, and I showed him this panel. And I tweeted at Tom Taylor, and he actually responded. It was cool.
Yeah, that was nice.
And then the next is Superman backslapping John.
Probably calling him a sanctimonious shit.
Yeah.
See right here, this one here maybe, like, just kind of plop this in the timeline somewhere, like some minor events changed, but nothing changes the outcome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he's still very much kind of like this character, but John does say, he comes, something is wrong with this universe. All you need to know, Superman doesn't kill. Or you all need to know, Superman doesn't kill. Superman doesn't lead through fear and violence. Doesn't intimidate. Superman isn't cruel or vengeful. Superman is a friend. Superman helps always. He says, if you can't accept the truth from me, then perhaps there's someone else you need to hear from. And he plays the message of Lois that she gave him when he left.
It's great.
Yeah. She says, "I'm sorry for what you have to go through, for the trauma you have to face head on. I wish I could be there to look after you, but I know you have to do this alone. I know how much he took from you, the time he stole from us. After everything he did, it would have been so easy for you to hate, but I know even now you don't. It's remarkable. Your compassion, your heart, your empathy, those are your greatest powers. That you've chosen to confront your greatest fear to help strangers. That is what makes you Superman. I love you. Come back to me."
It's awesome. Like that she didn't say John or anything. he was able to use it.
Use it to really make an impact on Superman, and it looks as though it does. But we do have Cyborg, who invented a device to send John back to where he came from.
Yeah.
And he blasts him with it, and so as John fades away, he tries to, tell him to find a better path.
Yeah, and that it is really good that happens. And like you said, like it kind of takes John out of the equation without really having a chance to what do you call it?
To change the events of that world.
Exactly.
It kind of just plugs him in for a short amount of time, gives all of the characters kind of something to do. It does, put Batman and Harley Quinn in harm's way, but also kind of gives them this added moment of capture. But after that, they go right back to being on the lam and running the insurgency from the shadows.
Yeah, so it's kind of like an interesting story, and like, does it affect anything? But it makes a difference, I think, in John. So,
well, certainly for John, because now he's seen two other versions of his dad.
Probably makes him appreciate his dad a little bit more,
right? Who are
want
evil
for kids to appreciate us,
right? Oh, I feel that hardcore.
I know.
But he's seen these versions of his dad who's a killer, and all of the stuff his dad can do, and all of the things that he would be capable of, if not for who Clark is, and who Lois is, and who John is, and who they're surrounded by.
It's true.
So, but we end up back on Earth Zero, and we get back, and he said it's because he talks about his dad. He said, "I didn't understand. I get it now. My father's hesitation to do more. It's not because it would be too hard to tackle more of our world's problems. It's because it would be too easy. It's loud. Our world is so loud. There are screams and shrieks and howls. Something is wrong. Something is so very wrong." John Kent's adventure continues in Beast World.
Yeah, in November. So it makes me wonder if maybe in October we'll get like an annual. Maybe the annual will be Val-Zod. That's just me predicting it. Like, because how
that would be great.
It would be. It would be awesome. Definitely a character I'd like to see more of, especially where this adventure started. So are you thinking what I'm thinking, that John's gonna be kind of lost in the multiverse maybe for a little bit, trying to get home? Quantum leap.
I don't know. I mean, he's on Earth Zero, right?
Is he?
Yeah.
Are we sure?
It
says Beast World.
Yeah. Well, it does say Earth Zero on the top, but that's an editor's note. That's not, like that could easily be he thinks he's back home.
Exactly. Could be some Marty McFly stuff. Who knows? But it was a good book.
Well, even so, he's returning to a world right now that everybody is being plunged into nightmares and screaming in their sleep.
Yeah. So he'll tie into Night Terrors, maybe in something. I don't know. We'll see.
We shall see.
Yeah, I was trying to tell Solomon how, like, I'm like, yeah, buddy, like right now, because he's all geared up to talk about Justice League and Godzilla, and I'm like, yeah, right now they're doing this big event. So, all right, that's our episode. We covered a lot quickly, but we stayed focused, and that's what happens when you stay focused and on target. But James, Any plugs you want to say to our good listeners?
Superman Red _KR everywhere.
That's where you'll find James as he's kicking back, taking names. And don't forget to check out our Patreon.
And working out hard in the gym.
Slamming it. We always have fun stuff over on the Patreon coming up. We plan on reviewing another movie here this month, maybe even 2. So check it out. And remember,
part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
What's up, everybody? Chase Smith here from the Chase Smith Podcast and Cavs on the Break NBA Podcast.
And I'm JD, host of the Hyman Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network, and we are super excited to bring you a brand new show starting next Tuesday, the Fanfare Podcast.
The Fanfare Podcast is all about your favorite movies and our favorite movies and the best moments in cinema. To help guide our discussion, each episode will feature one classic, and we will grade this movie using a report card-like scale A through F. We're going to be grading categories like acting, directing, cinematography, the score, and even the movie poster itself.
And when we're not featuring a movie report card, we'll be sharing our movie rankings, franchise deep dives, actor and director interviews, and everything in between. Movies have been a major part of our lives, and we cannot wait to share our thoughts with you.
Our premiere episode will drop Tuesday, June 27th, and JD and I will be reviewing Raiders of the Lost Ark in preparation of the release of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny on June 30th, the 5th installment of the franchise.
Join us on the Fanfare Podcast, available on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. Here's how Books with Brooks works. We read one book a month, and then we talk about it. Classics like Stephen King's The Shining, debut novels like We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang, and tons of other compelling, life-changing stories, one book and 1 month at a time. So come read along with us, and then listen in.
before we start this episode of Krypton Report, I want to take a moment and just give a shout out here to our Patreon. I know what you're thinking. Gosh, everyone's asking for money, and I get it. But our Patreon is only $1. $1 a month. It helps us keep the podcast going. And what we do is we try to find interesting shows and topics and whatever we want to talk about. We've done, as of this little thing, our last recordings were on the Scream series. Brian and Tyler, that's me, do our own show where we record in the car, and it's kind of funny. And we talk about pop culture or whatever is going on. We also have the Supernatural podcast we've been reworking. It's taken on some time just because of life. But we do movie commentaries as well. It's something that James and I have done, what we used to do on the main show that we've started doing here. So for $1 a month on our Patreon, you can get those shows. There's at least 4 a month. Also, there's my movie pitch show that I do. But also, what we want is if you're a Patreon, you can come on. You can come on the main show if you want. Or if there's something you want to come on and talk about, we can do it as a Patreon special. So all I want is for $1 a month, think about chipping in, joining our Patreon, and you have a voice to be a part of things. Follow the link in the link tree or in the show notes below, patreon.com/KryptonReport.
This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.
Look up in the sky.
We just want to say, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please check out other podcasts on the Press Play Podcast Network.
If you are like Tyler and James and can't get enough super talk, check out these other podcasts. Digging for Kryptonite, Supergirl Radio, The Last Sons of Krypton, The Superboy Legacy Podcast, All-Star Superfans, Superman the Animated Podcast, The Aspiring Kryptonians, Always Hold On to Smallville, The Geek of Steel, and Truth, Justice, and Hope.
Remember to check out Krypton Report on all social media platforms. Go to linktree.com/KryptonReport. You find all of our